Here we are. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days away from Decision Day, and I do want to remind you you're tuning in today, and you're listening to 2 hours of self-righteous, God-fearing pomposity, as said well by a man from Buell, Idaho, who is just fed up with conservatives. Wonder why he's living in Buell then, of all places. Maybe it's that infiltration, that slow drip, drip, drip of the efforts of the Californians to take over and colonize Idaho. We'll never know, I guess, until they're actually there in large numbers and they suddenly say, "Aha! We're taking your guns away today." Well, anyway, a lot to talk about. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, as the guy with the big voice said, and newsradio1310.com, our website, of course. That means you can listen to us anywhere, all over the world, even after a backhoe will back up and accidentally tear out some of the wires going to our tower and transmitter site, which has happened recently. You can just go to the web and listen to the program. I know that might require some dexterity. Some of us with non-opposable thumbs had to go through some special classes to learn how to click with this mouse and actually do that. Sometime, likely before Thanksgiving, we are going to have an app available for your smartphone, and that app will make it easy for you. I was actually in where was it? Boise Stage Stop a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday morning having breakfast with friends, and we decided to tune in and listen to a friend on the radio about 2,000 miles away. And we were able to do that. Sent a couple of text messages, and he even gave us a shout out while he was on the air. We were sitting there at the table, sipping coffee and listening to his comments from that distance. So that is one of those things that is on the way. Technology is a wonderful thing. It's really changing our lives. But the basics are still there. We're all looking, I think, ultimately for the same things. Do I have a good roof over my head? I hope it doesn't leak. I hope there's food on the table. I hope I have gainful employment. Well, okay, some Democrats are thinking they don't need that part. But I hope I have a number of these things, and if I can get those things, I'll be a happy camper. And I do want some opportunities for my children and grandchildren someday. We have a lot to talk about in the sense that we're down to just a few days, and the country's going to make a momentous decision on which direction we're going. Daily Caller has this story, and I thought it was a good place to jump off with some of the political talk this morning. Are you familiar with Martha McCallum? She's on the air right now at Fox News Channel. She hosts the show with Bill Hemmer, their late morning program. Martha McCallum looks pretty good for a woman who's almost my age. That's saying she's in her mid-50s. But she had a tweet the other day. I didn't realize well, I know that these big-time news anchors have Twitter accounts. Who has time to follow everybody? But apparently elsewhere in the news business, someone is assigned to follow Martha McCallum's Twitter account, and she tweeted this. And it was a direct comment to John Podesta, the Clinton family consigliere who is behind a lot of the troubles Hillary Clinton currently has with the email dumps, etc., that are going on. And remember, they claim that the Russians stole these emails, and they're now saying, well, some of those emails may even be fictitious. Yeah, that's the ticket. The Russians stole the emails, and they're making them up and claiming that these are the emails that they stole. That's the ticket. McCallum tweeted this to Podesta. Once you start haggling over what you meant in an email, the idea that it was written by the Russians kind of goes out the window. In other words, Podesta saying, well, I don't think I said exactly that, although the Russians stole it and then they actually made it up. And she's saying you can't have it both ways. If you're now saying, well, that's not what I meant, then clearly you did write it. It was not made up. And the New York Times has already exonerated the Russians and said they weren't behind the theft of the emails from Clinton Inc. Last night I was watching a little bit of Fox News before the baseball game came on, and Brett Baer broke this story. I think Fox broke it all together. And has it been widely reported since? Of course not. But the FBI is now delving in to whether the Clinton Foundation was corrupt. And this investigation is apparently even much bigger than anything dealing with Hillary Clinton creating some sort of treasonous act by having classified information on her homebrew email server. And of course, her aides and assistants trafficking in those same treasonous emails and classified information being perhaps looked at by not only the Russians, but the Chinese, Al Qaeda, and all of the other world's bad actors. But the Clinton Foundation, which has been sucking up money, just hoovering it up from all over the world, It's a much, much bigger deal in that sense because they could be selling what's called influence. That is, look, you foreigners give me a lot of money, and we'll ensure that after we are president, that means her husband is a package deal, we'll do your bidding for you. You don't think people just give I sure like Hillary's looks. As the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, here's a few $1,000,000. Have fun there, kiddo. Doesn't happen that way. They're taking in this money, and the people who gave the money expect something in return. And all of you lefties out there, oh, the Democrats are for the little guys, and Republicans are mean-spirited. Oh, come on. What a simpleton. What an elementary viewpoint, infantile viewpoint of how all of this works. And it just shows you that every liberal you meet out there is generally 2 beers short of a six-pack when they come up with that sort of thing. So this investigation, according to the release that or the details that Bret Baier picked up at Fox, is much more widespread than anything dealing with email and classified information. It has been going on a couple of years now. So Hillary Clinton is going to prison. Even if she gets elected, she's eventually going to end up in Leavenworth. Understand that? Well, what's that going to mean? Yeah, but I still want to vote for her because that Mr. Trump is mean. Right. Although he's a highly successful businessman who nearly lost his business and then found out how to bounce back from it and became successful all over in another medium, and that was entertainment television. You're right, though. We have to go with a criminal and set up a constitutional crisis and other problems for this country for decades to come, because you might not get your free lunch. Bill Colley with you. It's 8:14. Thank you for joining us this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 29. I didn't realize it was that chilly out. That's got to be wrong. I stepped outside a few minutes ago. It did feel much better, but it's temperature gauge tells me it's 29. Well, not in the studio. If it was, I'd have cause to go home and, well, I'm not going to file a complaint. No, I wouldn't do that, but I'd have cause to go look for somewhere warmer at this point. I don't know, maybe Acapulco. Well, a lot of people will be going back there if Trump gets elected, and that's not a bad thing either. Hillary Clinton is going to be campaigning with a fellow by the name of Jay-Z. He claims to be a musician, and he writes lyrics that are anti-police. Now, she had that Alicia Machado on stage with her the other day saying that Mr. Trump is a mean dude. Who is Alicia Machado? Is that her name? She was the Miss Universe contest, and she claimed Trump said she was fat. Well, she ballooned up to 180 pounds. She's not supposed to look like that as Miss Universe. That's part of the deal. And he suggested, you should lose a few pounds, and she wouldn't do it. Then she was implicated in a murder scheme. She drove a boyfriend to a homicide scene, and he committed a crime. And she's up there, well, she's looking at Hillary Clinton saying, hey, you are a fellow traveler, not just in politics, but I love the way you disposed of Vince Foster. And Democrats say, well, okay, they killed a few people. What's the big deal? We'd all like to do that. In fact, there was a college professor from, I think he's a small college in Ohio, and he was trying to organize other college professors and said they were going to go to NRA headquarters in Virginia and shoot up the place. Yeah, and a friend of mine checked it out, though, and it turns out he's no longer employed at the college. You think that perhaps somebody suggested to him, we all pretend to be liberals here, and even though we all know that we're bloodthirsty savages with no morals, you can't publicly let people know, so we're going to have to let you go. That's apparently what has happened with that. He'll be voting for Hillary, I assume, come Tuesday. He should be in jail, too. Maybe the two of them can get a cell together because of the threats he's been making and because of the corruption that she's always involved with. Got a lot more to talk about this morning, if I could. This is Bret Baier speaking about what's going on with this potential investigation. He was on the air last night on Fox News Channel with Britt Hume.
The investigation into the Clinton Foundation, looking into possible pay-for-play interaction between Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and the foundation, has been going on for more than a year, led by the White Collar Crime Division, Public Corruption Branch of the Criminal Investigative Division. of the FBI. The Clinton Foundation investigation is a, quote, very high priority. Agents have interviewed and re-interviewed multiple people about the foundation case. And even before the WikiLeaks dumps, these sources said agents had collected a great deal of evidence. Pressed on that, one source said, quote, a lot of it. And there is an avalanche of new information coming in every day. Some of it from WikiLeaks, some from new emails. The agents are actively and aggressively pursuing this case, and they will be going back and interviewing the same people again, some for the third time.
So this broke last night. I mean, in our time, between 4 and 5 o'clock. On the East Coast, that would be between 6 and 7 o'clock. So I thought, okay, this morning it's going to be all over the rest of media. 4 o'clock this morning, our time, I turned on the television and flipped on Morning Joe, which is, of course, the program that is hosted by a great many members of campaign appendages of Hillary Clinton. They spent the first 7 minutes, I timed it, talking about the Chicago Cubs' win last night. All right, you mean that's the lead? Well, they don't want to talk about Hillary Clinton. Then, when they finally got to politics, they talked the process. That is, they talked about poll numbers. Oh, gosh, Hillary's not doing so well over here. Well, yes, but Joe, because everybody likes her and we all like her, we're telling all of our friends and all the people who watch us, as well as read us, that Trump's a bad, bad man. He's mean, you know. He's not nice to women, and that they need to vote for Hillary because she likes women. In fact, she likes women a lot, if you know what I mean. Rachel Maddow broke into tears on the air the other night. Literally broke into tears the other night when details came out about sinking Hillary. I guess Rachel will not be invited over to the slumber party at the White House like she was expecting. This is the point that establishment media doesn't want to tell people right now what its girl has done because they know that if people get the full truth, and not everybody listens to talk radio, not everybody watches Fox News, and so it's unfortunate, but if they bury this and continue to bury it through next Tuesday, we're going to have a president in the Oval Office wearing a ball and chain. I'll tell you what, they should have put one on her a long time ago. It just maybe what do you call that? A muzzle too, as well, because I'm going to share some of her speechifying if I can a little later in the program. It is nails on a blackboard. That's all I can tell you. It is just. It might even, if you were married to that, make you interested in something like Paula Jones. Hey, we've got more coming up. Bill Colley with you this beautiful Thursday. It is a clear sky morning. It is a little chilly to start the day. We've jumped now from 29 to 32. I knew I would warm things up. Yes, a lot of hot air. Well, we haven't even had that fellow call. You know, the fellow who's illiterate in both English and Spanish? Speaking of hot air. We'll be hearing from him, I'm sure, at some point this morning. He'll call up and say, yeah, and everybody out there will go, gee, I never thought of that. That gibberish has convinced me to change my vote. That's coming up. Even some liberals have decided that it's time to walk away as quickly as they can from Hillary Clinton. One former MSDNC employee, I think his name is Chunk Uyghur, used to be a college Republican and then I guess got hit on the head or had some bad dope and he ended up becoming a socialist. But he is out today saying that on his podcast, they call it the Young Turks, I believe, because his family was Turkish and they emigrated here. But he's saying it's time for the libs to throw her overboard and says that she is a danger to the future of the republic.
Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton together have taken over $3 billion in terms of direct salaries through speeches, etc., from multinational corporations and banks. They've also taken campaign donations, independent expenditures, and money to the Clinton Foundation. When you put all that together for their career over the last 40 years, they've taken $3 billion. Now you say, hey, 40 years is a long time, and one of those is a charity. Yes, but it's not $3 million. It's $3 billion. And the Clintons themselves are worth at least $150 million. Now, you in Washington find that perfectly normal. The rest of the country goes, somebody's going to want something in return for that $3 billion. You know why? Because it's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're local yokels. No, it's because they have normal common sense.
he mentions that just regular people have normal common sense and can understand how bad this is. There's a piece today from a college professor in the Washington Times, and she was a believer that these were all deplorables who were supporting Donald Trump, and she ended up driving from Maryland to Virginia to go to a Trump rally, and she came away convinced that Trump is right and that the people who are there are good, honest, hardworking Americans. You always get a couple of people in a crowd who are going to be a little unruly and going to be troublemakers, but remember, we've discovered that a lot of them were actually hired and sent there by the Clinton campaign to pretend that they were deplorables. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Well, yesterday I was listening to a program in the evening, and the man was an operative at the CIA for 26 years, and everything he said was very credible. And he said that Langley, the CIA, is so upset with this whole situation that they are leaking information to WikiLeaks to help promote this situation. And everything he said made sense, and it was a Michael Savage show. I don't mean to plug it, but
oh no, I've got nothing against him. Like the guy, in fact.
Okay, because this guy was a 26-year operative, and he says the unrest in the FBI and that CIA was so viral that they've had it. These people, you say, where are the people who care? Well, maybe they do. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. I was driving to Boise a couple of weeks ago, and I tuned in and caught some of the Michael Savage show, and I forgot just how enjoyable it was to hear the man. I mean, he is so manic that it just it's tough to keep up with, but he's got such an incredible mind. It works so fast. It's just, the synapses are firing faster than I think anybody else in talk radio. Coming up on 827, back to 29. The wind must have changed direction slightly. We do want to remind you, if you're listening to the program today, first of all, a big thank you. Number two, though, if you're having difficulty listening, we want you to remedy that because we would hope that you would keep listening. And we're in that period of the year now where we have the crisp fall air and some of those issues, of course, dealing with walking around outside. You'd like to enjoy this beautiful time of year, but if you can't hear it, and we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas coming, and you can't hear family at gatherings, it's going to be very difficult for you. You need to call Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. Dr. Christine Pickup and her staff, they don't want you to miss a minute. And you can be ready if you get together with them. They can help you out. You can enjoy all the fun of family gatherings and special moments with loved ones. Schedule your hearing health checkup today. The number 312-0957. Life is worth hearing, and that number once more, 312-0957. About a little over a minute to go. We'll squeeze another caller in. Caller, you're up next. You're on KLIX and Top Story.
Good morning, Bill. I wanted to call in yesterday, but our little friend that calls in all the time and really tries to demean you about other things. He used to do the same thing to Kelly. Kelly tried to invite him out many times.
Well, he's not a regular American. First of all, you got to realize that. This is somebody who came here to feed at the public trough, and we're getting in his way.
Right, but the point is he likes to throw things out, but he likes to hide. Here's the whole thing, though. He accused you and all of us that listen to you that we like to hover around the, I don't know, what do you want to say, a-hole of Trump. I want to remind everybody that every time one of these guys from the left starts screaming about something, open your eyes, because they're doing it themselves. Hillary, the glass house Clinton, that likes throwing rocks from a glass house, everything she talks about Trump, I get so upset because everything she talks about Trump, she's done 10 times over, but yet, Trump's a bad person for admitting that he's flawed, but yet she's okay no matter what she's done. And this is my point with him. He does this all the time. He calls up, he starts ranting and raving about something, but if you look at it hard enough, they're the ones doing it, not us.
And thank you for the call. You got to remember, feel some sympathy. He came from a narco-terrorist state, and they do everything down there by just, hurting you at 2 a.m. and then shooting you if they don't like you. There is no justice. And we used to have people who came to this country and they wanted to keep it the way it was, and now you've got people who want to pretty much institute what they had there. friend of mine is sharing with me this morning that Nate Silver, who runs the legendary, politically legendary 538 blog, Silver said in May he was being somewhat of a smart aleck. Want to clean it up a little. That he said that the Cubs would win the World Series and Donald Trump would win the election, but he was being facetious. Well, actually, I told this very same friend, I think early summer, I said that the Cubs would play he may remember this, that they would play the Indians in the World Series. I took the Cubs, and they barely got through it, we should point out. But he's pointing out, he said, Silver has been wrong 7 times about Donald Trump. So, polling data, and there was a woman who was speaking on CNN in the last couple of days, and she was from England, and she said, yeah, well, they got it all wrong on Brexit. And she said the reason they did that is because the people who are doing the polls, they're forgetting their own biases. And, a lot of times people in testing, they don't realize their own testing biases are influencing what they're doing. It's almost subconscious. They basically threw her off CNN, though, because she referred to it as the Clinton News Network. And, oh, golly, they don't like that when you call them out. You have 76% of American reporters who say they'll be voting for Clinton. 8% say they're going to be voting for Donald Trump. I don't think anywhere, academics and maybe but even only parts of Hollywood. They're not as noisy, but there are a lot of Republicans and conservatives and libertarians in Hollywood. But the thing is that most of these professions are dominated by liberals, and they bring those biases heavily. And this notion that somehow that they are not unbiased. I mean, come on. And they don't try to hide it. They don't even try any longer. If you think about it, they don't even try to bring conservatives into a newsroom to balance it. We're completely beyond that point. Dishonest media is what you could call them. And I think that I don't care what side you're on, even a lot of Democrats who've been surveyed realize that they have been in the camp of Hillary Clinton. This is Jeff McCall. He's a professor from DePaul University, appearing on the O'Reilly Factor on Fox News Channel last night with Bill O'Reilly, speaking about those overwhelming numbers of people in media who will not check their hats, much less their views, when they come to the door.
The reporters are a reflection of the environments in which they live. And they live in newsrooms where most of their colleagues lean left, and they went to colleges and J schools where most of their professors leaned left. I find these poll results fascinating. By the way, it's worth pointing out that the USA Today poll you're talking about is supported by other polling that came out from Quinnipiac and from the Associated Press recently. So there's a consistency here in those poll results. And one thing that I find really fascinating about these poll results is that clearly a number of Hillary Clinton supporters agree that the media is tilting against Trump.
Okay. Do you, based on your experience with alumni who have gone through DePauw's communication system and now work in the industry, do you believe that if you are a reporter and you are favoring Trump, say you in a conversation with someone and, I really don't like Hillary Clinton, I might give Trump a go this time around, do you believe that that would be held against you in some newsrooms in America?
I would dare say that most right-leaning reporters in a newsroom probably wouldn't want to acknowledge that very much.
Because they fear reprisal in their job?
They would feel that they don't fit into the culture there.
I would say that is true. And I've got my own experiences I can share with you, but I'd like to get to the telephones for a moment. Coming up now on a dozen minutes from 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. Of course, online means you can listen to us anywhere, all over the world, by clicking on the Listen Live icon. Also coming up after 9 o'clock news, State Representative Lance Clough is going to be talking with us about HJR5 and his support of that. That's on the way. Caller, you're next. You're on the air.
For the liberals and the Democrats, it's their way or the highway. My experience goes clear back to college many, many moons ago, and I had a liberal professor from Sandpoint, Idaho. And it was brought to my attention. I was doing good college work, I thought, but I belonged to Young Americans for Freedom. I didn't have any time to participate in it. But anyway, finally this one grad student said, your professor doesn't like your politics. I thought, what? What's that got to do with anything? It has everything. These schools, colleges, they go to these colleges, Bill, and they have been so brainwashed into thinking socialism, Marxism, whatever kind of totalitarianism is so great, this redistributing the wealth, I mean, it becomes part of them. And so if you're going to get ahead, I think this is true. I know for a fact that Mike Simpson, when he went to Boise as a freshman representative, he was very conservative. This comes from a friend that went in the same time he did. He bought cases of the law, which is great as far as refuting the Marxist doctrine. But within a year, he changed his whole tune because somebody got to him and apparently said, Mike, if you're going to get ahead in this political process, you're going to have to come around to the liberal point of view. And certainly that's been the case, and his voting record reflects on it. But it's really sad that we have the media, like I say this morning, turned on Good Morning America. There was not one word in all the newscasts that I heard about the FBI probe. And like I say, we're likely to elect a president that's going to be put in an orange jumpsuit with a ball and chain. It's going to be really something. We'll have a constitutional crisis because the FBI is not backing down. The media will not expose Hillary and the corruption of the Clinton criminal machine. So it's really sad, folks. Get out there. Evan McMullen is a phony conservative for those of you out there that seemingly can't stand Trump. But I can guarantee you we can look past Trump's mistakes, I guess, or his part of his life. But he can really turn this thing around. I believe he loves this country.
He's going to try,
We
and
need to
that's
vote
better.
accordingly. Thank you.
And I think he's going to try, and he's going to try, I think, a lot harder than look, the Clinton family is about enriching themselves and just the wielding of power, which helps them enrich themselves even more. My own story about media. I worked for 17 years in news before I transitioned into the talk end of things and started giving opinions and analysis. I guess that's about the same, isn't it? But I started in news in the middle of the 1980s and pretty much stayed there. My first radio job, I spun a few records too as well, but it was mainly news. I got to television. Now, I worked in a newsroom that was, I thought, the model for America. We had a news director who was a Vietnam veteran, an old Goldwater Republican, but our managing editor was a Sanders-style socialist. Yet they worked well together, and that diversity just in the command structure kept everyone on the straight and narrow and doing a fair job. And even people that I would interview would tell me that your outfit is the most fair that we deal with. I went to work in television after that, and you had to impress a group of people who worked in something called the producer pod. There were 4 or 5 show producers there, an executive producer, and what a guy called an assignment editor who picked the stories that you would do every day or veto your ideas if he didn't like you. And one day I mentioned I was going to go out and do an interview with a conservative politician who they didn't know happened to be a very good friend of mine, and they all badmouthed him. A few days later, I mentioned I was going out to do an interview with a liberal politician, and they all said, "Oh, say hello to her for us. A long time no see." And if you pleased them, you got better assignments, which would help further your career. If they didn't like you, you got the bottom of the barrel. So if you were a conservative, you didn't talk about your politics a whole lot in front of this crowd. You just basically nodded your head and smiled like you were a liberal soldier too, and you went along with it. That's how it's done. And it's done everywhere in media today. And it's done in academia and a few other places as well, as we were discussing. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX. It's outer space again. We're being contacted by the Martians. 736-0300, 736-0300, the number to reach the program. Coming up on 8:53:32. And then I had to go, after I got into talk radio, I had to go speak to a college class at a big university, which was home to the Newhouse School of Journalism. And the professor was a flaming old liberal, and they had a second professor there who had worked at the local newspaper before becoming a flaming liberal professor. And I was there to present the conservative view. And I showed up with clippings, even from the ombudsman at the New York Times, saying, yes, indeed, it's a liberal newspaper. And I came in, I passed these out to all the students, and I gave my presentation, and then I referenced my friend who happened to be the best-known conservative politician in the area, And the two professors would started publicly bad-mouthing him. Well, what do you expect the students are going to take from that? They couldn't even be objective in a discussion about objectivity. You're next. And then I got a letter from one of the professors later on who said, well, your views were interesting, but between the lines, we're not having you back. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX. Go ahead.
Hey, Bill. For my job, I drive all over the Magic Valley from one end to the other, north, south, east, west, and I've kind of been doing a little informal survey. In all the last couple of months, I've seen 2 Trump signs. I've seen a couple of McMullen signs, and just this morning, I saw 6 Gary Johnson signs. The Trump-Pence word's not getting out there unless everybody's just assured that he's gonna make it for Idaho. It's not much of a showing.
I saw a massive sign for Gary Johnson and William Weld, the liberal William Weld, and I think it was in eastern Idaho a few weeks ago, but it was huge. It covered the entire side of a barn.
Yeah, I'd like to get a couple. I'm just not sure where to go. I guess I could try the Facebook page or something, but I just don't know where to get some signs. Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe they're not focusing here.
Well, yeah, I think that they feel that they're going to win this state, the polls, and thank you for the call. Polls show that Trump has a 20-point lead, if not more, over Hillary Clinton. And then McMullen was third in the state. He was at about double digits at 10, I think, at the last poll I saw. Interesting that Eric Erickson, who is part of that Never Trump crowd and claims that he's not sufficiently conservative because apparently there's some big, it's like a church. They've got their own catechism, and apparently they are the high priests of conservatism, and they claim Trump isn't the right guy, so they would rather have Hillary. He has a website called The Resurgent, and he bragged the other day about writing in Evan McMullen's name in Georgia. McMullen apparently isn't on the ballot. I read that same website today, and one of his colleagues, apparently it's not a requisite to be Never Trump to work at The Resurgent, one of his colleagues unloaded on McMullen, saying McMullen is claiming to be a conservative, but he doesn't get into much depth on various issues. In other words, he's trying to please a lot of people, so he kind of gives lip service that he's pro-life, but he doesn't really go overboard. And he says he's opposed to same-sex marriage, even though his mother is apparently involved in a same-sex marriage. And when he was asked if he would bring in Supreme Court justices who might overturn that decision on same-sex marriage, he said no. So, he's being portrayed as the true conservative here, and apparently he's not. And I'm not going to, and I said it the other day, I know there are a lot of people who are going to vote for him around here because he's LDS. Well, I wouldn't vote for Nancy Pelosi, and she's a Roman Catholic. I wouldn't vote for Joe Biden or John Kerry just because they go to the same church. Doesn't mean, you take any group of 100 people, you're going to find some bad apples in there. We've only got about, I want to apologize to my caller, but we wouldn't be fair with about 30 seconds to go before the break to bring another caller in this situation because we have a hard break and Fox News is on the way. Also, we'll spend a few minutes with State Representative Lance Clow in the next hour of the program. He's talking about HJR5, which the media has joked it's an obscure ballot measure. It's not obscure any longer. A lot of people are talking about it around the state. It has actually split, though, many leading members of the Republican Party. Some support it. Well, the majority seem to support it, but some very prominent Republicans, including the governor, as well as the attorney general, they are opposed to the ballot measure. So we'll be talking about that coming up in just a few minutes right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Bill Colley with you, whether you like it or not. Yes, another hour of self-righteous, God-fearing pomposity on the way.